So hello, I think this is a really great time to get going on. I'm Utah. I'm excited to learn more about ways to respond to questions on the spot. Fantastic. We'll talk about that for sure, Jocelyn. So my name is Andrea. I'm with Inspira Advantage. I will be your host for tonight's webinar and tonight's discussion called Preparing for Dental School Interviews. What does tonight look like? Well, we're looking at running this webinar between 45 minutes and an hour. So the first portion of it will be a conversation. We'll go over quite a few different topics. We'll talk about them from a high level in a moment. So that'll be the majority of the conversation. But towards the end, we love to do a Q&A. So throughout the course of the webinar, we encourage you to use that chat option and pop your questions in the chat. And our two wonderful panelists who will be introducing themselves momentarily will give you their insights from their years of experience doing this and working with students across the country. This webinar is recorded and you will receive a recording within your inbox within a day or two. So if you do have to pop out, rest assured you will receive a recording. So in terms of tonight's discussion, what are we talking about? What are we learning about? So we'll be speaking about interview prep techniques, answering common questions, how to highlight your qualities, managing interview anxiety, and of course that Q&A that we chatted about. Before I pass it off to our panelists, I just wanted to take a very quick moment to introduce who we are, because you might not know who we are or why we are qualified to speak on this particular subject. So as mentioned, we're Inspira Advantage. We're a globally recognized college, or I should say, consulting and test prep firm with 15 years of experience. We specialize in guiding students through the complex and competitive process of applying to graduate schools in healthcare fields, including dental, medical, residency, veterinary, physician's assistant, and various nursing programs. We have a 94% acceptance rate, and we maximize an applicant's chances of getting into the world's most competitive programs. We believe in starting the candidacy development process as early as possible. So for college freshmen, we offer a pre-health advising and profile development program. What we do is together we build a timeline and plan for the years leading up to applying and help walk students through every step of the process. We start with a complete academic advising, including course selection and GPA strategy. Next, we want to help students get involved in the right experiences in order to really help differentiate their profile from other top applicants. This includes finding and applying to research engagements, shadowing opportunities, clinical and non-clinical volunteering, student clubs and organizations, extracurriculars, leadership roles, and clinical experiences. Our goal is to help students gain a strong foundation and understand what admissions are really looking for while building a portfolio that sets them apart from other applicants. So while our counselors support students in that regard, we have teams of tutors who work closely with them to provide personalized one-on-one tutoring. So students take official diagnostic tests before starting the process, so our tutors can assess their strengths and areas of development. This helps create a customized study plan structure for the days, weeks, and months ahead. We tailor our approach to each student's unique needs and schedule, providing the right assessments and lessons as they become familiar with test content, strategies, and format. Interim tests monitor and track progress, allowing us to modify study plans and build an upward trend to leading towards the official test date. So for our dental students, we have a 21 plus score guarantee for a 60-hour program. Once we help shape an outstanding candidate, we continue working with them to create the perfect application. Our all-inclusive application programs provide students with unlimited support through the entire application cycle. Our programs start with a detailed profile analysis, diving deep into the student's stats and experiences. This foundation helps to create a unique story and application narrative, and also guides the creation of a well-balanced list of reach, target, and safety schools. Our admissions counselors, who are also writing experts, will brainstorm, outline, and edit personal statements and supplemental essays until they are perfect. These essays showcase the best aspects of our students, connecting their journeys with the themes of each school they apply to. Whether it's the main application or scholarship essays, we offer unlimited edits. Once the applications are submitted, we support students with interview prep, hence this webinar, scholarship applications, communicating with admissions, waitlist strategy support, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are with each student until the end of the application cycle. So once they hear back from every school they've applied to and receive their acceptances, this is where we part ways. Overall, our goal is to build the most competitive candidate and application. We use every tool in our skill set to ensure the products we create with students stand out from the rest. If you're interested in learning more about us, our packages, we offer personalized free consultations via video, phone, or email. Our admissions counselors are ready and willing to help you through the process so you don't have to navigate it alone, no matter where you are in your application process or your application cycle. With that being said, I know you're not here to hear me speak all night. I will pass it off to your panelists this evening to introduce themselves and really get going.
Hey everyone, my name is Harsh. I'm a second-year dental student right now at Columbia University. It's great to see everybody out here. I am an admissions counselor with Inspira, and just to give a little bit background about like my profile, my application history, and some of the students that I've worked with. I went to undergrad at Nova Southeastern University. I saw somebody in the chat said that they're from UCF, so shout out to them for Florida. And then kind of applied right out of undergrad and came to Columbia. I think I applied to 18 different schools and then I interviewed at 16 of them. So yeah, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different interviews that kind of experience. So I'll definitely be able to provide my insight on those. And just this past cycle, I helped 5 different students from my own undergrad. And some of them are attending Harvard, UCSF, Michigan, and UNC right now.
All right, sweet. My name is Herschel. I'm also a second-year student here at the University of Michigan School of Dentistry. I also do work as an admissions counselor for Inspira. A little bit about my background is I went to the University of Georgia. So I've lived in Georgia my entire life. And then right out of undergrad, I decided to come to Michigan. I applied to 10 schools. I interviewed at 8, and I just ended up at Michigan. So I've been loving it, and I'm excited to see what we have in store for y'all today. And yeah, get the ball rolling.
Awesome. So as you guys know, when it comes to interview prep, there's a lot of strategy involved. I think one of the most important things is definitely mastering the different types of interview formats. So each different university typically has their preference. Some schools like MMI, like for example, I know Michigan has that notorious MMI interview that was kind of stressful. And then there are other schools that are more kind of laid back. They'll just do like more of like a conversational interview where you just talk to like a professor, a private practice doctor, or even a student and just answer a few questions. I know some schools do a group interview. So it's a lot of different formats that you definitely want to strategically approach. And developing these strategies will really help you perform your best during your interview day.
All right, so I guess when going into an interview, you always have to think about what you're saying, obviously. And so there are always like the common questions such as, hey, tell me about yourself, or what motivates you? What are some experiences you have? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And at the end of the day, you have to very carefully craft those responses in the sense that you always want to think about what you're saying and formulate that before you actually say it. Because what can happen if you don't do that is you're going to end up rambling on. You're going to talk until the interviewer is just confused as to what your answer to their original question even was. So for this, at least from my end and from my experience, I would suggest always taking 2 or 3 seconds right after they ask the question and just sort of taking in the question, thinking about, okay, what's going to be my introduction to answering this question? What's going to be like some things that I want to draw from in terms of experiences? And then how am I going to conclude this question by restating what their question was, right? So you want to keep it very short, concise, and be very thoughtful and be very mindful of what words you're using. You want to be very purposeful. Don't try to just add in like cool words that you think will sort of impress them. Rather, you want to just take the time and answer the question straight on and tell them why you're here, right?
Yeah, I think that was actually a perfect segue into this next slide, which is highlighting your qualities. There's many different things that you definitely want to do while you're answering an interview question. One of them is showcasing your strengths. So this concept is not really geared only towards the question when they ask you like, what is your greatest strength or what is your greatest weakness? But really, whenever they ask you any sort of question regarding like your leadership abilities, your teamwork skills, you always kind of want to trickle in your different strengths that you have throughout those. And I think the best way to kind of highlight your qualities is by providing a personal experience. So for example, like whenever I was asked about a question regarding leadership, I always thought back to the time when I was a leader in one of my organizations in undergrad called Ahana Dental. And I frequently thought about this organization just because I had a leadership role. And I would just kind of explain a specific scenario of a different moment that showcased different strengths that I had. And that kind of ties into the next bullet point, which is drawing from experiences. I think if you use specific examples, it really allows the interviewer to kind of connect with what you're saying. So rather than them hearing like, oh, as a leader, I want to have good communication skills, good leadership skills. If you show them how you did that, I think that will definitely reside with them pretty well.
Totally agree. Just something I wanted to add on to that for drawing an experience. So like I said, you want to formulate an introduction, you want to formulate your experiences, you want to draw from your experiences. So that's sort of like your evidence that, hey, like this is my strength and this is why, right? Like this is how I showed that, oh, like this is one of my strengths. Like I am confident, I am intelligent, I know how to work with the team. And those are the experiences. Like the experiences do help in supporting your statements, because if you don't have experiences that support your statements, it's kind of like just a very fluffy answer, if you will. And when that happens, the interviewer is like, okay, and your point is. So definitely want to draw from your experiences. So whenever talking about managing interview anxiety, obviously I think everyone gets like the nerves, like whenever you're trying to start, when you're about to start an interview or about to go into that room and you see maybe one or maybe like 10 people sitting in front of you. And everyone obviously has different levels of interview anxiety. For me, I personally did have a ton of interview anxiety, but I will say that I feel like the anxiety sort of dropped as I went from interview to interview, because I sort of just got a gist of, hey, like these professors usually really aren't trying to put you down. Rather, you're there for a reason. And you also need to understand that, oh, like they picked you for a reason to interview at their school. And so they're there to want to accept you rather than not accept you. So at the end of the day, like everyone's part of the same team whenever you do go into that interview. So you obviously do want to stay calm during that like interview. And the thing is, like these professors or deans definitely know that, hey, like everyone is nervous today. And so some schools, at least for where I interviewed, I would say UNC, Hirsch interviewed there as well. They provided a very relaxed meet and greet the night before we had our interview. During the interview, like that entire day, it was very relaxed. They talked through the entire process. They had like a lot of students just running around talking to you as an interviewee as well. And I felt like that really helped with just staying calm and understanding that, hey, like it's all going to be all right at the end of the day. Like you're just talking to another person. And so obviously stay calm. Second thing is you do want to build your confidence. And the only way to do that is by practicing. If you never practice for it, it's kind of hard to formulate your thoughts very concisely and very clearly. So the more you practice your practice questions, the more you sort of rehearse in front of a mirror, in front of your friends, in front of your family, you just ask your family that, hey, can you help me out? And just sort of talk it through with them. And I feel like that's a very good aid to help with that confidence boost, where it's like, oh, like I'm just talking to another person. And in that sense, you can also get that feedback when you do practice with whoever is opposing you.
Yeah, so kind of to piggyback off of what I was talking about previously regarding different types of dental interviews. So as you can kind of see throughout this slide, there are very drastically different types of interviews that a school can kind of choose from. The traditional interview, which is kind of a standard like one-on-one approach, kind of focuses on your background, your motivations, and your personal qualities. So this is kind of like those standard questions like tell me about yourself, and then some situational questions trickled in there. Something about traditional interviews that's also interesting to note is that there are some that are open book and some that are closed book, which essentially means that sometimes the interviewers will be able to review your application beforehand, whereas sometimes there are interviewers that just are interviewing you blindly. They don't know anything about you. You're kind of just getting to know each other right there. So it's very important to kind of get a good grasp of what the interview is like before you actually go to the school. There's obviously, you know, many different resources online. If you contact any of the counselors here too, definitely would be happy to help with that. But it's a good idea to get a good grasp of how your interviews are like beforehand. MMIs, for example, assess how you think critically. So this is very important because, you know, there's going to be many situations as a dentist where you're going to have to think on the spot, many emergent cases, many scenarios where, you know, you're in the patient's mouth and you have to work very abruptly. So MMIs kind of test your ability to think very critically, think on the spot. From my experience, it's very like ethical based also. So there's like ethical scenarios that you're provided that you have to kind of formulate a response like on the spot. Then there are the other sets of interviews, which are like group and panel interviews. So essentially a group interview is kind of challenging because this is one where you're kind of faced with a question in front of a large group of people. So you're not really trying to compete with each other, but rather you want to build off of each other and kind of work as a team. My personal advice whenever it comes to group interviews is always try to build off of one or two people's responses, just because I think that's very constructive and uplifting, because you're not only helping them feel like they're heard, but you're also kind of connecting with other students in the group. When it comes to panel interviews, these can be definitely intimidating because you're kind of getting interviewed by a set group of people. I remember my interview at UF was kind of like this, and that was quite a scary one where there was 3 different professors kind of asking pretty difficult questions kind of on the spot. So it really, you know, it kept me very focused, where I was really forced to kind of be ready, similar to an MMI style interview where you're thinking critically. So you definitely want to make sure that you prepare well for each different set of interview. And then finally, there are virtual interviews, which I know a lot of schools are doing now, where either you get one of these styles of interviews virtually, or you get a pre-interview type concept, which is known as Kira. So I know a lot of schools have kind of thrown in Kira into their admissions process, where essentially it's a software where you get asked a question, you get like a minute to read it, and then you get a minute to respond. And then you get a certain set of questions. And sometimes there's even like a written component too. So when it comes to virtual interviews, that's a whole other kind of beast to practice for, because, you know, now you're not really conversing with anybody. You're kind of just staring into your camera, you know, with no response back. So the way that I would recommend preparing for that is just, you know, outright recording yourself, like on your laptop, and just kind of overlooking and seeing how you're doing. And of course, for each of these sets of interviews, a mock interview is honestly the best way to prepare. You can, you know, you could prepare interview questions on your own. You can prepare answers. You can practice various ways, but I think a mock interview will best assess how you do in like a critical situation where you're actually talking to somebody else. But yeah, those are kind of a good breakdown of what kind of interviews you will experience.
All right. So Hirsch definitely hit a good amount of those. And so I guess going back to the traditional interview style, right? The biggest things that you want to consider whenever you walk into a traditional interview, well, obviously before this, you would have obviously figured out that, oh, I'm interviewing at this school. What type of interview are they doing? And so now you figure out, okay, it's going to be a traditional interview where I'm just sitting in front of another person, a professor, most likely, or maybe a student. And then you're like, okay, is it going to be open book or closed book? And so like Hirsch said, open book is like they know everything about you. They have your application right in front of them. And then closed book is they don't know anything about you. You're about to greet them with a handshake, and that's going to be your first ever interaction with your interviewer. And so the first thing you're going to want to do is research the school. At the end of the day, you're at their program, and they want to know why they should pick you over the hundreds of others that they have a pool of picking from. And so they also want to pick someone who actually knows their stuff about their school, because if you're going to be attending a school, you definitely want to know, okay, like, how does it work? What's their curriculum like? What's the class culture like? Like, what does clinic look like? What are the interactions that take place daily, right, between professors and students? like how many students do they even take in? And so whenever you understand those small things about a school, you sort of get an overarching idea of, okay, this school is very heavily based on service. They do a lot of service trips. They open up mobile clinics. They do a lot of dental daycare type things, versus another school that may be very research heavy. And so now whenever you go to their program, you'd be talking about research. You'd be understanding that, oh, like I definitely want to further dental education through doing research. And so at the end of the day, different schools are meant for different things, and every school is going to have their mission statement. And it's as easy as literally looking up the school, and their mission statement's usually the first thing that pops up. And then if I were you, I would just go through that website and just learn about things that you're interested in. It doesn't have to be something straight out the book. You just have to go on there and find things that you're interested in. So for example, I remember UNC did have a type of technology where you could sort of practice drilling or doing fillings on like a robot type of technology. It was like a virtual reality machine or augmented reality machine. But that's something that I like sort of figured out that they had through my research of the school. And that's what I did get to talk about during one of my interviews whenever asked about it. And so that's just an example of trying to find what you like for a school and understanding what that is. The second thing is practice your responses. I think Hirsch had a like hit on the dot that you always want to do a mock interview. It's going to help you gauge where you're at in terms of speaking with someone, clearly articulating your responses is a concise, and having another person in front of you is going to be the only way that you can sort of get that feedback for how you're interviewing.
Awesome.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just popping back in to see if we have any questions in the chat thus far. I don't see any, but again, I recommend that just throughout the course, I don't want you guys to have to wait to the end and, maybe forget. Pop your questions in the chat. If they get answered throughout, that's awesome. If not, we'll make sure that they are answered. Can we schedule one-on-one mock interviews? You can definitely schedule one-on-one mock interviews. Yeah, that is definitely something that we offer. And we can talk about that one-on-one. So yes, definitely. I lost my train of thought there, but yes, keep your questions in the chat. We want to hear from you. No question is too big or too small.
Awesome. So to kind of transition into the next topic, we will monitor the chat, by the way, if you guys do have any questions, like as each of the slides are coming up. So definitely just feel free to shout out any questions in the chat, and we'll keep making sure we look at them. So in terms of the next set of interviews, so navigating MMIs. So these interviews are particularly difficult because you get asked a set of questions that, you're not necessarily familiar with from the beginning. So there are various strategies that you can implement to kind of be successful when it comes to navigating these MMI interviews. And one thing that I really recommend is kind of what Herschel mentioned before, which is really having a good format to your interview response, where you come up with like, an introductory, like how you're going to approach what your specific response is, and then you kind of conclude by connecting back to the response. So when it comes to like MMI style questions, what I always recommend doing is approaching both sides of whatever debate the topic is on, and kind of addressing like the pros and cons of both sides. And then in the end, kind of coming up with like a compromise, because that's kind of what that's what they're looking for, how willing you are to compromise and come up with like a solution in the end. I generally, for a lot of these questions, try to be as like unbiased as possible, obviously, because these are like ethical questions typically. But even when they're not, try to just be accountable for both sides, because it kind of shows your understanding abilities. And another big thing, and this, spans across most interviews, just try to stay as calm and as adaptable as you can, even if it is a question that you're kind of uncomfortable with. Like, for example, I remember one specific interview where I was asked a very abstract question, which was one time I faced a difficult situation and it ended poorly. So it was a very abstract question which I kind of was set back. And it doesn't hurt to just take like an extra 5 to 10 seconds to just say, oh, I'm sorry, like, that's a very interesting question. Like, I will need to think about it for a little bit. And you can do the same thing with these MMI style interviews. They don't expect you to have the right answer like right away. So definitely, take a few seconds, take some time and think about an answer. And if you're ever worried about it being like too like awkward, in terms of like there being an awkward silence if you're thinking, what I used to do was just kind of repeat the question in like a more slower phase, essentially just reword the question and just say like, oh, that's an interesting question or something like that, just to kind of give me like more time to go into the next set of questions. And then I saw a question in the chat. What types of questions, as Kira asked, should you expect standard interview questions? Thank you. So yeah, Kira, essentially it is pretty standard interview questions. I think anything is fair game. Usually anything ranging from like why this school, tell me about yourself. And sometimes I've even heard like the most like abstract, like favorite book you've read, or like who you would want to eat dinner with if it was like anybody dead or alive. So be prepared for like a vast range of questions when it comes to Kira.
Before I continue on this slide, I'm going to address the second question. It says, can you please explain what the mini interviews is? So the only MMI that I experienced was at Michigan, the University of Michigan. Basically, for my experience, I believe it was 5 mini interviews, and I believe it was 5 minutes each, if I recall correctly. And so basically it's going to be cycling through 5 different interviewers, and you will only get to spend time with each interviewer for 5 minutes, and they quite literally just want to hear your response to their question. One example I can give for a multiple mini interview type question that I remember from Michigan was that, oh, what are your thoughts on digital dentistry? And so before I answer how I answered that, I definitely want to elaborate on how to prepare for this. Definitely keep up with current events in dentistry, because you are going into a profession that is centered around continuing education, in the sense that dentistry is always evolving. You definitely want to read up on something that you want to become. So at the end of the day, they do expect you to know just like very simple things of, oh, like what are the new implementations of digital dentistry, right? And so you can talk about scanners, you can talk about recently like AI, artificial intelligence, right? And like Hirsch said, you definitely don't want to like be biased. So you sort of address that, oh, I like this, and this about digital dentistry. However, I also still do understand that digital dentistry comes with its set of like disadvantages, such as this, and this. And so that sort of just shows that you've thought about digital dentistry in both ways, rather than just keeping tunnel vision and saying that, oh, digital dentistry is great, done. All right, moving on with the slide, and then we'll address that next question. Common interview questions. Why do you want to become a dentist? That is a very common interview question. I believe I was asked that in, I would say, 80% of my interviews at least. Definitely practice this question a lot. Just know what you want to say in terms of this. At the end of the day, like, the people interviewing you have heard like the classic response that, oh, like I had braces when I was young, I want to do dentistry because I'm inspired, or my parents do dentistry, I want to do dentistry, or I want to help people, I want to do dentistry. I feel like those are very classic responses, and as an interviewer, they're sort of looking for something more deeper that you see in dentistry. So definitely be very personable in this one. I would encourage everyone to just introspect, be like, oh, like in dentistry, what qualities do I like? So it can be like the creative aspect of it, the work-life balance of it, maybe the fact that you get to like diagnose something and go through like step by step and create a treatment plan, and that treatment plan can be completely different from someone else, and that's like very cool to you. But definitely try to be out of the box, think out of the box for that type of question. How do you handle stress is another common question. I would personally just err on the side of being honest. Just tell them how you manage your stress. For me, it was playing sports. So I would just talk to them about sports, and that usually gets a conversation going. And whenever your interview is going as a conversation, I feel like that's an amazing sign, because it's like, hey, like you guys are connecting on a deeper level than rather than just a question answer session. Third question can be like, what is your greatest strength? Definitely want to highlight your greatest strength, but that also doesn't mean you boast about yourself, in the sense that you don't want to just highlight, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this. Rather, like we mentioned, pull from experience. Just talk about, oh, like, I guess the experience that shows my greatest strength is this, and then you pull up like teamwork experience or something of that sort. And so definitely want to err on the side of caution that, hey, like I'm not showing my ego too much, rather just show them rather than tell them. For the fourth question is, tell us about a time you faced a challenge and how you overcame it. At the end of the day, it's very easy to tell if someone is making up a story. Rather, just be genuine. Just think about a time that you did have a challenge and how exactly you overcame that. And that requires prior planning. So you're going to start thinking about these questions. You're like, oh, what can I say for this question? And so definitely want to prepare for these types of questions. And I think one that was not listed here is, tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself is one of the biggest questions that I got. And they're just expecting a very normal response from you. Just, hey, like, who are you outside of dentistry? Tell me more about like where you come from. What are your roots? Things of that sort. And so, yeah, those are the common interview questions.
Awesome. So before I dive into this slide, I'll answer the next question that I see. So where can I find which type of interview the university will do? So typically, if you look it up online, there are many different resources. If you search up like the school specific name and like interview prep or something like that. I know Inspire offers many different resources. SDN also has great resources for helping with interview prep. So those are different ways where you can kind of find out what interview type that you're going to experience. Also, oftentimes, if you have any graduates from your school that have interviewed at that program, definitely is a good idea to kind of talk to them, see what their take on the school is as well, and then see if you could pull from their experiences. And if not that, I think some schools also just let you know like what the interview style will be like. So there are very different routes that you can kind of take when finding it out, but the information is definitely online somewhere. And I don't know specifically about the IDEP interview in UT San Antonio. I don't know if Herschel knows more about it, but I didn't apply to any Texas schools, so I'm not too familiar with their interview process. But we can definitely look more into that and see if we can kind of come up with something for you after this session. And then another question I saw was, where do you find the current events topics? So that was actually a great thing that Herschel mentioned regarding MMI. So in regards to current events topics, what I used to do was I would just look up like news related to dentistry and just kind of read up on like various articles, like a couple weeks, like, you know, weeks before the interviews, and kind of see what was like trending in dentistry. And not only that, I found that it was very helpful because I got a bigger perspective on like what was actually happening in dentistry that I did not even know. For example, when we were interviewing, I remember something that I read that I think connected really well at UNC specifically was the concept of like dental therapists, which is honestly a pretty like, you know, a controversial topic. But in the news, I had read like how North Carolina was starting to implement dental therapists. And so I had mentioned that during my interview, and the interviewer had liked that a lot. So not only is it important to stay up to date in current events in dentistry in general, but also kind of read up on the school or even like the state that you're kind of in, because that will definitely be helpful to connect with their program specifically. And yeah, I'll kind of jump into this slide now. So highlighting key experiences, kind of like what we were talking about in the past few slides, where whenever you're answering a question about like your strengths, or if you want to show like an example of like your leadership, how you work in a team, anything like that, you always want to highlight something that you've done in your past. Clinical experiences are great because they show your hands-on ability, and not only there, but your ability to communicate well with patients, understand how to deal with various different types of patients, and just get a better understanding of dentistry. So in terms of clinical experience, whether or not you were like an assistant, if you shadowed, even if you worked in like a medical facility, like any of those clinical experiences, I think are great to mention. I remember at one of my interviews, I was asked specifically, describe your favorite procedure in detail. And so that, you know, kind of put me on the spot. But I had previously practiced this question just because this university was kind of notorious for asking that style of question. So it's always good to kind of read up on the school specific to help kind of prepare what you want to say for the schools. Another important thing to talk about is volunteer work. So volunteer work is honestly very, very essential for coming into dentistry because dentistry is a very community-oriented field. You're really, you know, there to kind of serve a very broad population. And, you know, giving back to the community, I think is great because you get to learn more about what the community around you is like. And so throughout undergrad, I did various different volunteer opportunities. And I think talking about the volunteer work you did for that university is great. But if you want to take it a step further, talk about how you're going to contribute to that university's volunteering initiatives as well. I know various schools have a multitude of volunteer opportunities. For example, Give Kids a Smile is one that is shown throughout all dental schools. And that's a great opportunity to get involved with as a dental student, and one that would be great to mention during an interview. In terms of academic achievements, there's many different academic achievements that you can kind of mention whenever you are giving an interview. For me, frequently I did a lot of research in undergrad, so I had like a few presentations. I would always mention that just because that was kind of, you know, very near and dear to my heart, where like I put in a lot of work there. So I wanted to kind of showcase that when I was interviewing. But this can kind of be on a broad scale. I know one of my friends that was interviewing when I was, she was like a competitive dancer. So, you know, she had won like awards and in dancing. And so definitely it can be anything. And it doesn't have to be just dentistry related. It can kind of, you know, broaden like past that as well.
Hirsch, do we address the what types of questions does Kira ask? I'm not sure if I skipped over it.
I think I talked about it briefly. It was more so like just very general. Like they have like that broad range of questions. But if you want to go more in depth, definitely go for it.
Yeah. No, I can just touch on it. Kira does ask just very general questions. It's very situational based, from what I recall. So it can be like anything ranging from like traditional interview questions to something that you may have never seen before. But at the end of the day, all they're trying to gauge is if you can sort of think on the spot for those types of questions and to formulate an answer, even if that means that you take the first 5 seconds to think about it. So just wanted to make sure that that question was addressed. So handling difficult questions, like I just mentioned, as soon as you hear something that you never thought you'd be asked, just ask if, would you mind if I just take 5 more seconds to think about it before I answer? And usually all of the interviewers are very open and they totally understand that you need time to think about it and formulate a response. So sort of take a moment, think, take a breath, understand that, hey, it's okay. They're not here to go against me. They're here to help me out. So take a breather and then formulate your response, say it. And I already touched on this. Always be honest, be very transparent. It's very easy to lie about things, but the thing is, if you ever lie about something, I am almost guaranteeing that I'm sure they'll figure it out, because at the end of the day, they have your entire application. They've probably researched you just as much as you've researched them, right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to be accepting people who are going to be great representations of their program in their school as like a lifelong dentist. And so obviously they have a very honest nature, and they really don't want to see anyone lying. So obviously be honest, and even if it's a bad quality that they ask about, just say it to them, right? Because at the end of the day, they would much rather you just come up to them and say that, oh, like, yeah, I did have this mistake, but this is how I learned from it, rather than you lying about it. So that's that. To answer, do they see how you work full time and have been studying within applications? Would you mind explaining what you mean by that? Hirsch, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, so I think she might just mean that like in terms of like during application cycles, how like her like continuing work, maybe that's what my
Okay, yeah.
interpretation was. So I'm assuming like if you're going to be working like full time while studying applications, they definitely have a good idea, because in your AdSess application, for the different activities you put in, you can't put in like full time, part time, or temporary. So if you do mention full time, and if you definitely like throw that in like kind of how you've been managing your time that way in like a essay or like in a personal statement or anything like that, they will definitely recognize the effort that you're putting in.
Totally agreed. To answer that next question, is volunteer combined with shadowing? No, it is not. On your application, whenever you do fill out your experiences, there's like a drop down box, and it'll ask you, oh, like, what is this? Is it volunteering or is it shadowing? So those are definitely two different hour blocks. So it's like, how many hours have you shadowed? It's gonna clearly show them that, oh, you've shadowed 50, and then you've volunteered for like 100, or whatever your numbers are. So no. And it is important to mention both volunteering and shadowing. Definitely go out and volunteer. Shows them that, hey, you actually do want to help people, right? So shows them, not tells them. And shadowing is definitely going to get you that experience that you want to be an applicant, because they want people who are very committed to dentistry, because it is a very extensive process to get dental students, and they don't want anyone to not be sure about dentistry. So definitely shadow, understand what you're getting into. It's a great field. So it's also just great experience coming into dental school. So yeah, I'll go to the next slide.
Awesome. So yeah, one thing I will mention, a question that I always get asked is like when it comes to like shadowing versus assisting. So those are two definitely different activities that you are going to be putting into your application. And from my experience, dental schools do have like usually like minimum like shadowing hours. So I would say like when it comes to either or, definitely kind of not prioritize, but like definitely make sure that you have a good amount of shadowing before moving to assisting. Just because I know that dental schools are notorious for like kind of like, you know, taking a look. Obviously it's not the most ideal, but like making sure you have like enough hours in terms of like shadowing, volunteering, and extracurriculars. I saw another question. What do you guys recommend updating the application? I have an interview and I'm debating if I should update it within the next week or wait until after my interview. So I think when it comes to updating your application, I would definitely say it's a good idea to kind of wait until after your interview. I think now that you've kind of got that interview kind of in your back pocket, it's a good idea to kind of put full efforts towards that, because basically the interview is your step through the door for that school. So they're definitely now kind of just testing your personality, seeing how well you fit for the program. And then when it comes to updating your application, I think if you do that a little bit later on, it kind of shows your continuing involvement in dentistry. So basically or not just dentistry, but just continuing involvement in your efforts essentially. So that'll just show the schools that you are still working hard, even after applying. And then I see the other question, what kind of program you're talking about? So we are talking about like general dental admissions, not for residency applications. If you do have any questions for residency, you could definitely shoot us a message later on. And then, yeah, I will jump into this slide. So when it comes to making a lasting impression, there are many things that you can kind of do in interviews to be, you know, to stand out, but you don't want to try like too hard essentially to make that lasting impression. I think honestly, if you're able to just connect well and just, you know, be kind to others. Like, I think that will make a much better lasting impression than kind of going out of your way to make sure that you speak to like every single, like, you know, admissions person or every single student there. I think as long as you kind of, you know, speak to everybody kindly and like get to know people on a deeper level, I think that speaks wonders. And then obviously, you know, one of the main things that interviews kind of end off with is the question, like, do you guys have any questions for us? And here, there's different approaches that you can kind of take. One is obviously, you know, pre-preparing some questions for that dental school. And that would be like by viewing their website and making sure that the question that you asked isn't answerable on that website. But also something that I always recommend is try to see what the background of your interviewer. Like, for example, say your interviewer is like a pediatric dentist, then maybe asking a question about, say like, oh, how was your guys' research at the school in the orthodontics department? Maybe that's not as beneficial, right? So definitely try to gear your questions more specifically towards the interviewer that you are talking to. And then obviously, you know, at the end of the interviews, definitely thank your interviewers, and then express your you know, your passion for this program, and say that they're like, you know, they're one of your top choices. You're very much considering them. I think that always leaves a good spark in that interview. And then the personal thank you note, I think that's a great addition. Whenever you end an interview, always ask for the interviewer's contact information. Usually they provide it, or you could just find it online, and then send them a quick like 2 or 3 liner thank you email. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. I think brief is better, just because, you know, these interviewers, they are seeing thousands of applicants, or hundreds of applicants for interviews, but it's always good to kind of just, you know, leave a brief, like 2 to 3 sentence note at the end.
Cool. I'll answer the question in the chat. How much do certifications like coronal polishing and CPR help? I personally definitely know about the CPR. If you do have a CPR certification, definitely put it in. There's like a separate tab for like awards and certificates or something. And you can definitely upload like a picture of your certificate on that tab. As for coronal polishing, if it's a official role that you did learn as a dental assistant, as like an advanced standing dental assistant, then I would suggest putting it on. But if it's something that you just learned to do on the job, I would advocate against it, because you definitely do want to keep rules and regulations in mind when putting things like that on your application. How soon after your interview should you send a thank you email? I personally sent it the same day. Hirsch, anything different?
Yeah, honestly, same thing for me. If like, for example, like if you have like a flight after the interview, like maybe the next morning or something, but it's nothing like crazy. Probably just wait like max like a day or 2.
Yeah, totally. Definitely don't wait a week and then send it. But yeah, exactly. Steps to improve interview skills. I think we like really hit the bone on all these mock interviews. Like I said, find someone to help you interview, someone that can critique your interviewing skills, and that'll be the best help that you can get for preparing for an interview. Self-assessment. I think Hirsch mentioned this. You can obviously speak in front of a mirror, or you can record yourself and sort of rewatch that recording and figure out things that you do, such as your hand gestures. Maybe you do too much hand gestures, or maybe you don't do anything at all and you're just like straight faced and just looking at them. That type of self-assessment is going to help you sort of figure out that, okay, I need to stop doing this, I need to start doing this. You can also assess how you talk, or how you articulate your words, or how you articulate your responses. And the third thing is seek feedback. That sort of just goes back to both of those first 2 points. Always look for improvement. In my head, I don't think you can ever get at 100% for interviews. There's always room for improvement. And so, yeah.
Awesome. So I saw a question in the chat. how many hours of shadowing is recommended? So here, it's a good question. Honestly, this question has been asked a lot to me too, like in the past. There's no real like, set in stone number. From what I've seen from like working and like hearing from many people, like at least like having like 100 to 150 is like a decent amount. If you have like 150 plus, like that's pretty competitive, I would say. And then I think the other question we answered, the how soon should you, let me see this next question. What do you expect when they ask about favorite procedure? Can it be a simple procedure? Does it need to be sophisticated or a big one? I think this can be like as simple. Like I remember I talked about like a crown prep. So it doesn't have to be like anything like crazy, but you could pick like any procedure that you want. You just want to describe it like in detail. And this was just one school that I remember that asked this question. So it's not like it's like a common thing to be asked. But in general, I would like, just in case, like recommend like just looking it over really quickly. So in terms of this slide, so I will break this down in terms of like virtual versus like in person. So body language and communication is super important. Especially when it comes to a virtual interview, because really all they're seeing is like the top half of your body for that entire like however long experience that interview day is. So you definitely want to have good nonverbal cues. Like you want to be talking like directly at the screen. You don't want to be like facing like this way, or like, like if you have a monitor, don't like look at your monitor or anything like that. Try to be like, sit up front and, don't have anything like distracting in the background. And use like gestures to kind of like your advantage. Try to treat it like you're right in front of them, but don't like go too crazy with it. And then definitely make sure you have clear and concise responses. If you feel yourself rambling, honestly, the interviewer probably will recognize that as well. And you don't want to go and answer a question for too long, just because then the interviewer will kind of forget also like what the point of like the whole like your response would be. And then when it comes to them, like if they're writing down like key points, maybe they'll even forget to write down like what you're going to say if it's not concise enough. And then there are the in-person interviews where, for example, like Herschel was saying, we were both actually met each other at the UNC interview. And UNC does this unique thing where they have a social the day before their in-person interview, which I think is a fantastic opportunity to get to meet students, get to meet current students, interviewing students, and even some of the faculty members. And so definitely, like take advantage of like, meeting people, getting to know the environment a little bit better, and just establishing comfortability. And when it comes to like body language and communication for an in-person interview day, essentially that entire day is an interview. Whoever you talk to, whoever you're like conversing with, whether it's like the person at the front desk, the security guard, you always want to make sure that you're kind of like, always like on top, like be like ready for like responses. Like, for example, like I remember an interview that I had, there was an in-person or virtual opportunity, and I chose to go like in person. And I was the only one there. So it was like very like awkward because there was like, there was like a student panel, there was like a financial aid session and everything, but like I was the only student there. So I was kind of like, put on the spot. And I had to make sure that I was maintaining like, like talking to everybody, and it was just a lot, but you definitely want to make sure that you're kind of ready for that in-person experience. But I think in person, if you have the choice, definitely choose to go in person.
Agreed. Like we said, we'll get to all the remaining questions during the Q&A. So final interview preparation tips. Oh, definitely review your application and personal statements. Like we mentioned, there are a lot of questions that sort of draw from your application. And so to an interviewer, it would be very odd if you wrote something on your application and it didn't line up with what you said in the real interview. So definitely understand your application, know what you wrote, know where your head is, right? So if you wrote that, oh, I want to do dentistry because of this and this and this, and then they ask you, oh, like, why do you want to do dentistry? Hopefully the responses are similar, right? And so definitely just read up on your application, just know what you said, as well as your personal statement. And practice, and yeah, just stay positive, focused, confident. And we hit on all those points. At the end of the day, they're there to help you. So yeah.
Awesome. And then managing that final, post-interview follow-up. So this is kind of like we were mentioning before, after your interview, definitely send a thank you note to the interviewer. And when you're kind of writing this, maybe write like a sentence about like how you connected with the interviewer. For example, like I would try to always remember like at least one thing that me and the interviewer kind of talked about, whether it be like, something random like tennis, or whether it be something specifically about that school. And then you always want to say like, oh, this is, one of my top choice programs. I would definitely love to come here. Kind of ending off with that nice sentiment about the school, I think definitely goes a long way. And yeah, I think that would be an excellent way to kind of follow up post interview.
Hello. I am back, I should say. We are almost at the hour as well, so I think we only have time for a couple questions. But before we hop into that, we'd love to ask a favor out of you. As you can see on your screen, we would love some feedback on tonight's webinar. I promise you it's only like a minute. Just questions, comments, concerns, positive feedback, of course. We are open to it all. We would absolutely love to hear from you. What we do with this feedback is we actually take it back and we just look to improve our offers, improve how we do things, our sessions. So it would be very much appreciated. Give everyone a second to scan that QR code on screen. Awesome. We've been really good about answering questions throughout the chat. Sorry, I should say throughout the session. So we have a couple of questions. We have a couple of 2 or 3 minutes left. So I'd like to take a moment to just answer them. So Jocelyn asks, so you recommend sending a thank you card to the specific interview and not the program? The program has an email, but should we send one to each person? That's a really great question, Jocelyn.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I would probably recommend emailing each individual. Like what I used to do was I would send a thank you email to the program email, like the standard one, and then specifically to each interviewer. In terms of a thank you card, I know I've been asked that in the past before too. I honestly just found it really hard to find like who to send the thank you card to. And I don't know if like they would even receive the thank you card, because I'm sure like professors' mailboxes are like extremely like backed up and stuff. So I think like a thank you email is like, perfect. Just because it's easy on both parts.
Awesome. So there's another question in here. It's asking, awesome. Thank you. You're very welcome, Jocelyn. There's a question in here asking about the number of hours and sort of what is considered a decent amount of hours for volunteering and shadowing. Fernando, after this webinar, everyone will obviously receive this recording and a couple of links. So I'm going to, in that email, include it, because this sort of question has come up a lot about volunteering and shadowing and what that looks like. We're going to add in some additional resources. So some really awesome blog posts, some articles that you can take a read at, and it'll help you sort of understand that process a lot better and give you more info. Is there a way to specifically work with either of these counselors? I think that is a perfect way to end tonight's webinar. Absolutely. Yes, there is. If you scan this QR code, it'll take you back to just a page, book a free consultation, and then within the consultation, or frankly, just respond to the email that you got with the confirmation. It'll come back to me and I'll make sure that I do my part to set you up with one of these awesome individuals. So it's a little bit of a process, but we can make it happen. When I look at one more question. When I look on the website, I only see packages if we just want to do mock interviews, and we need to do it as soon as possible. Jocelyn, I am going to send you a message right after this, and we can connect about mock interviews. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here tonight. Thank you for the awesome conversation. Thank you across the board. You're getting lots of hearts and smiley faces and thumbs up from our audience. So again, and thank you to our audience for being here. We would absolutely love to do this again. So if you want to see more dental related webinars with these two awesome individuals, let us know in the feedback and we'll make it happen. With that being said, thank you everyone, and we hope everyone has a fantastic night.